The massive space station called Nexus Prime floated in the darkness of space like a giant metal city. Ships from hundreds of different worlds docked at its ports. Inside the main hall, beings that looked nothing like each other sat around a huge circular table. Some had 4 arms, others looked like walking crystals, and a few were just floating balls of light. Captain Lee Hyunwoo walked into this strange gathering with 3 other humans behind him. He wore a simple blue uniform with Earth symbol on his chest. The other species barely looked at him. To them, humans were still new to space travel. They had only joined the galaxy community 50 years ago. Lee looked around the room. Dr. Park So-young walked beside him carrying a small computer. She was the smartest person he knew when it came to physics. Commander Kim Tae-ho followed them, his pilot uniform neat and clean. Ambassador Choi Yoon-ji came last, her diplomatic robes flowing as she moved. A voice filled the room like thunder. It came from a being of pure energy floating above the table. This was the Zephyrian High Counselor, one of the oldest and most powerful beings in the galaxy. "We face a crisis that threatens 12 star systems," the counselor said. "The void locks are failing." Lee had heard about the void locks before. They were mysterious barriers that blocked off a whole sector of space called Kepler. No one knew who built them or why. They had been there for over 10,000 years, keeping everyone out. "The barriers are breaking down," continued the counselor. "Our scientists say we have less than 25 hours before they collapse completely. When that happens, the energy release will destroy everything within 50 light years." Whispers filled the room in dozens of different languages. Some sounded like music, others like grinding metal. Lee noticed that many of the alien beings looked scared. A tall, crystal-like creature stood up. This was a representative from the crystalline hegemony, one of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. "We spent 3 years trying to open those barriers," it said, its voice ringing like broken glass. "Our best technology could not even scratch them." Another being rose. This one looked like a floating jellyfish made of light. It was an Etherian, part of a species known for their mental powers. "Our greatest minds meditated for decades seeking a solution. The void locks resist all forms of psychic contact." A massive creature that looked like a walking mountain of rock and metal slammed its fist on the table. "The Titan clans threw our entire war fleet at those barriers," it roared. "Our weapons that can destroy planets barely left a mark." Lee felt the weight of their words. If these powerful species had failed, what chance did humans have? He looked at his small team. They had brought only 1 ship and 4 people. The Zephyrian Counselor's energy form pulsed brighter. "The Galactic Council has decided to offer Earth a chance to prove itself worthy of membership. Solve the void lock crisis, and humanity will earn a permanent seat on this council." Ambassador Choi stepped forward. "And if we fail?" she asked. "Then, Earth will be expelled from galactic civilization. You will be marked as too primitive to contribute meaningfully to our community." Laughter erupted from several alien representatives. A snake-like being with 6 heads hissed in amusement. "These younglings think they can succeed where we have failed? They barely understand faster than light travel. Their technology is thousands of years behind ours," added a floating metal sphere. "This is not an opportunity. It is a death sentence." Lee felt anger rise in his chest, but he kept his face calm. He had learned long ago that showing emotion in situations like this only made things worse. Instead, he studied the holographic display that appeared above the table. The display showed the Kepler sector. It was huge, containing dozens of star systems rich with rare metals and energy sources. Around it, the void locks appeared as a shimmering wall of energy. Even in the hologram, they looked impossible to break. Dr. Park moved closer to the display. Her eyes were bright with curiosity instead of fear. "Has anyone tried to study what the locks are made of?" she asked. A being that looked like a walking tree with golden leaves turned toward her. "Child, we have been studying them for millennia. They are composed of exotic matter that exists partially outside normal space-time. The energy patterns are unlike anything in our known universe." "But what if we're looking at them wrong?" Park said quietly. The room fell silent. Even the floating lights that were the Etherians seemed to dim with surprise. Wrong? The tree being's voice creaked like old wood. Young human. We are civilizations that mastered science when your species was still living in caves. Lee watched, his teammate carefully. Park had a look on her face that he recognized. It was the same expression she wore when she was about to solve an impossible problem. I understand you're much more advanced than us, Park said respectfully. But sometimes being new means you see things differently. What if the void locks aren't meant to be broken? What if they're meant to be bypassed? More laughter filled the room, but this time it sounded nervous. Some of the alien representatives exchanged glances with their large, strange eyes. Commander Kim leaned toward Lee. Sir, I've been studying the energy readings. Our quantum tunneling drives might actually work here. The frequency is similar to what we tested back on Earth. Lee nodded slightly. Quantum tunneling was humanity's newest technology. Most other species considered it primitive compared to their advanced drives that could fold space or travel through higher dimensions. The Zephyrian counselor's energy form flickered. You have 24 hours and 37 minutes remaining. Use them wisely. The council will provide you with a workspace on this station, but you must understand, we cannot risk our resources on methods we consider dangerous. As the meeting ended, alien representatives filed out of the room. Many of them whispered among themselves in their strange languages. Lee caught a few words that his translator could understand. Impossible, foolish, and doomed. Soon, only the 4 humans remained in the vast hall. The holographic display still showed the Kepler sector, the void locks pulsing with energy that seemed to mock their small size and simple technology. So, Kim said with a grin, no pressure, right? Ambassador Choi shook her head. They're setting us up to fail. This isn't really about solving the crisis. They want to humiliate Earth. Maybe, Lee said, studying the display. But that doesn't change what we have to do. 12 star systems full of people are going to die if those barriers collapse. We're the only ones willing to try something new. Park was already pulling out her equipment. I need to run some calculations. If I'm right about the bypass theory, we might actually have a chance. What do you need? Lee asked. Time to think and access to their sensor data. Even if they won't help us, they can't stop us from using information they've already gathered. Lee looked at his team. They were tired from the long journey to Nexus Prime. They were outnumbered by thousands of alien beings who thought humans were worthless. They had less than 25 hours to solve a problem that had stumped the galaxy's greatest minds for thousands of years. But as he watched Park set up her equipment with steady hands, Kim checked their ship's systems with professional calm, and Choi prepared to navigate alien politics, Lee felt something the other species probably couldn't understand. Hope. All right, team, he said. Let's show them what humans can do. The workspace the Galactic Council gave them was small and cold. It had 4 basic computers, some chairs that were the wrong size for human bodies, and a single window that looked out into space. Lee could see their ship docked nearby, looking tiny next to the massive alien vessels, while representatives from other species were still arguing in the main hall about theories and possibilities. Lee split his team into action groups immediately. This was something humans did well. They didn't waste time talking when there was work to be done. Park, I need you to analyze everything we can get about these void locks. Ignore what everyone else says they are. Look at them fresh. Lee, said Dr. Park, nodded and sat down at one of the computers. Her fingers moved quickly across the strange alien keyboard. I'm downloading all the sensor data from the past 1,000 years. There's a lot of it. Kim, check our ship. Make sure the quantum tunneling drives are ready for anything. And see if you can modify them, Lee continued. Commander Kim saluted casually. Already on it, sir. I've been thinking about what you said in the meeting. Our drives work differently than anything these aliens use. Ambassador Choi looked uncomfortable in the small room. What about me? I'm not a scientist or an engineer, Lee smiled at her. You're our secret weapon. Go back to the main hall, be diplomatic, ask questions. Learn everything you can about what the other species tried before. You want me to spy on them? I want you to learn from them. There's a difference. As his team got to work, Lee stood by the window and watched the alien ships. Each one was beautiful and strange. Some looked like living creatures, others like geometric puzzles made of light and metal. All of them represented civilizations far older and more advanced than humanity. But advancement wasn't everything. Sometimes being new meant you could see solutions that others missed. Park called out from her computer. Lee, you need to see this. I've been looking at the energy patterns from the void locks. Everyone assumes they're barriers designed to keep people out. Aren't they? Lee walked over to look at her screen. Maybe. But look at this. Park pointed to a complex wave pattern on her monitor. The energy doesn't just push outward like a wall. It also pulls inward like it's protecting something. And there are gaps. Gaps? Not holes exactly, but places where the energy is thinner. The other species never noticed because they were trying to break through the strongest parts. Lee studied the display. The void locks looked like a soap bubble around the Kepler sector, but Park was right. The energy wasn't uniform. There were 7 points where it seemed weaker. What if we don't try to break the bubble? Park continued. What if we slip around it? Meanwhile, Kim's voice came over their communicators from the ship. Sir, I've been running tests on our quantum tunneling drives. The frequency matches something interesting in the sensor data. What kind of something? Lee asked. Remember those theoretical papers Park wrote about pocket dimensions, the ones where space folds in on itself? I think the void locks might be using similar principles. Lee felt excitement building in his chest. Keep going. If Park is right about bypassing instead of breaking through, our tunneling drives might be able to create doorways. Not through the barriers, but around them through folded space. Park looked up from her computer with bright eyes. That could work, but it would need perfect timing. We'd have to create 7 tunnels simultaneously at the weak points. 7 tunnels means 7 ships, Lee said. We only have 1. Not necessarily. Kim's voice sounded excited over the communicator. I've been studying the alien ships docked. Here, most of them have compatible power systems. If we can get permission to modify their engines temporarily. Lee shook his head. They'll never agree to that. They think our technology is primitive. Ambassador Choi's voice came through their communicators. Lee, you need to hear this. I'm in the main hall and I just learned something important. What is it? The Etherians tried to make mental contact with the void locks 50 years ago. They said the barriers felt alive somehow. Not like a machine, but like a living test. Lee felt pieces of a puzzle clicking together in his mind. A test? That's what their psychic leaders said. Like the barriers were waiting for something specific. Park suddenly stood up from her computer. Lee, what if the void locks aren't just protecting the Kepler sector? What if they're waiting for someone who approaches the problem the right way? What do you mean? Every species that tried to break through used their greatest strength. The crystalline hegemony used advanced technology. The Etherians used psychic power. The Titan clans used brute force. But what if the test requires using multiple approaches together? Kim's voice joined the conversation over the communicator. You mean cooperation? Exactly. Humans aren't the strongest or smartest or most advanced, but we're good at working together and combining different methods. Lee looked around the small workspace. His team was scattered across the station and their ship, but they were all working toward the same goal. They were sharing information instantly, building on each other's ideas, adapting their plans as they learned new things. It was something humans did naturally, but he realized the alien species didn't work this way. Each species seemed to approach problems using only their own methods. Park, can you map those 7 weak points precisely? Lee asked. Already working on it. But Lee, there's something else. Creating 7 simultaneous quantum tunnels would require incredible timing. We're talking about coordination across multiple star systems. The slightest delay would cause the whole thing to collapse. How precise? Within microseconds. Lee felt his heart sink. Even with their best technology, coordinating something like that across space seemed impossible. Kim's voice came back online. Sir, I might have a solution for the timing problem. It's crazy, but it might work. I'm listening. Human nervous systems. Our brains can interface directly with quantum tunneling drives through neural links. It's something we discovered by accident during testing. The alien species can't do it, because their neural patterns are too different. Park looked up from her calculations. You mean humans could manually control the timing? Better than that. If we link multiple human minds to the tunneling systems, we could coordinate by instinct instead of by computer calculation. Humans are naturally good at working together. We could feel when the timing is right. Lee considered this. It sounded dangerous and impossible, but impossible seemed to be what they specialized in. Ambassador Choi's voice interrupted his thoughts. Lee, I've got good news and bad news. Bad news first. Several species are actively trying to sabotage our efforts. They've convinced the Council that human methods are too dangerous. We're being denied access to most of the station's resources. And the good news? I've been talking to some of the smaller species, the ones who don't have seats on the Council. They're willing to help us if we succeed. Apparently, a lot of civilizations are tired of being ignored by the big powers. Lee made a decision. Kim, get back here. We need to plan this properly. On my way, sir. When Kim arrived, the 4 humans gathered around Park's computer display. The Kepler sector rotated slowly in front of them, surrounded by the mysterious void locks. 7 weak points pulsed with different colors. Here's what we know, Lee said. The barriers might be a test. We need to create 7 quantum tunnels simultaneously. We'll have to coordinate by neural link because computers aren't fast enough, and we're doing this while half the galaxy expects us to fail. Kim grinned. Sounds like a typical Tuesday for humans. Park laughed despite the situation. I've been thinking about the neural links. The process is dangerous. Connecting human minds directly to quantum drives could cause permanent brain damage, or it could save 12 star systems, Lee replied. Ambassador Choi looked worried. Are we really going to try this? Even if it works, the other species will never accept that humans solved something they couldn't. Lee looked at his team. They were scared but determined. They had less than 20 hours remaining, and they were about to attempt something that defied everything the galaxy knew about science and cooperation. We're not doing this to impress them, Lee said finally. We're doing this because it's right. Because people are going to die if we don't try. Park started pulling up technical specifications. I'll need 6 more human volunteers for the neural links. We only have 4 people, Kim pointed out. Then we'll need to contact Earth. There might be humans on other ships in this system. Lee nodded. Choi, can you find out if there are other humans nearby? Already checking. There's a small trading vessel 2 systems away. It has a crew of 3 humans. Get them here. Fast. As his team worked with new energy, Lee looked out the window again. The alien ship still looked powerful and advanced. But for the first time since arriving at Nexus Prime, Lee thought they might actually have a chance. Not because humans were better than the other species, but because they were different. And sometimes different was exactly what the universe needed. 18 hours remained when everything started going wrong. Lee stood in their small workspace, watching displays that showed the void locks growing more unstable. The energy patterns were changing faster than Park's original calculations predicted. What should have been a gradual breakdown over 24 hours was accelerating. The barriers are destabilizing ahead of schedule, Park announced, her voice tight with stress. We might have only 15 hours now, maybe less. The 3 humans from the trading vessel had arrived an hour ago. Captain Nam Junki was older than Lee, with gray hair and steady hands. His crew, engineers Bae Min-ho and Yu Da-yoon, looked nervous but determined. 7 humans total, exactly what they needed for the quantum tunnel plan, but the Galactic Council was making everything difficult. They've denied our request for computational support, Ambassador Choi reported as she returned from another meeting. The Council says human methods are too dangerous to risk their computer systems. Dangerous how? Lee asked. They claim our quantum tunneling could create space-time fractures. Several species are demanding we be stopped entirely. Kim looked up from his equipment. Space-time fractures? That's ridiculous. Our drives have been tested thousands of times. Try telling that to beings who think human technology is primitive, Choi replied. Lee felt frustration building. The alien species weren't just refusing to help. They were actively working against Earth's effort. But he also understood their fear. If the human plan failed catastrophically, it could make the Voidlock crisis even worse. Sir? Nam Jun-ki spoke up. He had been quiet since arriving, studying the technical specifications. My ship has some equipment that might help. We've been trading in rare metals, including some exotic matter samples. What kind of exotic matter? Park asked immediately. The same type that shows up in Voidlock energy readings. It's not much, but it might help us calibrate our equipment. Lee nodded. Get it. Every advantage helps. While Nam's crew worked to bring their materials, Lee noticed new problems appearing. Their main computer started showing error messages. The power supply to their workspace began fluctuating. Small things that could be accidents, but too many of them happening at once. We're being sabotaged, Kim said bluntly. He was examining their primary computer terminal. Someone has been introducing viruses into our systems. Professional job, too. Who would do that? Yu Da-eun asked. She was the youngest of the newcomers, barely out of training. Take your pick, Ambassador Choi said bitterly. Half the species here think humans are a threat to their status. If we succeed, it changes everything. Lee made a quick decision. We work around it. Kim, can you isolate our systems from the station network? Already doing it, but that means we lose access to their sensor data. We'll use our own sensors. Park, how much data do you need? Park was frantically running calculations on her personal computer. I can work with what we have, but the calibration won't be as precise. The margin for error goes up significantly. How significantly? From 90% chance of success to maybe 60%. Lee looked around at his team. The odds were getting worse every hour, but they were still the only people willing to try something new. We continue, he decided. The next crisis came when they tried to modify the quantum tunneling drives. The work required connecting human neural patterns to the alien technology, something that had never been attempted before. Dr. Park went first. She lay down on a makeshift medical table while Kim attached neural interface cables to her head. The cables looked like thin metal wires that connected directly to her skull. This is going to hurt, Kim warned her. Everything worthwhile hurts, Park replied. Just do it. When the connection activated, Park's body went rigid. Her eyes rolled back, showing only white. For a terrifying moment, Lee thought they had killed her. Then she started speaking, but not in her normal voice. She sounded distant, like she was talking from far away. I can feel the quantum fields, she whispered. They're alive, not like biological life, but like music, complex patterns that respond to thought. Can you control them? Lee asked. Not control. Guide. It's like conducting an orchestra where every musician is in a different city. The neural link held for 5 minutes before Park began showing signs of strain. Kim disconnected her quickly and she collapsed back onto the table, breathing hard. It works, she gasped. But it's incredibly difficult and dangerous. I can feel the stress on my brain. Lee knew they had no choice. Who's next? One by one, each team member underwent the neural linking process. Nam Jun-ki surprised everyone. By adapting to it quickly, his experience as a trader apparently helping him stay calm under stress. Bae Minho struggled but managed to maintain connection. Yu Da-eun nearly passed out during her first attempt. Commander Kim had the worst reaction. When the neural link activated, he started convulsing. Lee almost ordered the disconnection, but Kim held up a shaking hand. I'm okay, he managed to say. It's just intense, like flying through a storm, but the storm is made of mathematics. After 6 hours of testing, they had successfully linked all 7 humans to quantum tunneling systems, but the process was taking a severe toll. Everyone looked exhausted and Park was showing signs of a severe headache. We can't keep this up, Nam warned. The neural strain is too much. We'll burn out before we can attempt the actual mission. Lee checked the time. 12 hours remained before the void locks collapsed completely. The barriers were now visibly flickering in their displays like a failing light bulb. "We need to try a different approach," Park said weakly. "What if we don't try to maintain the links for extended periods? What if we only connect at the exact moment we need to create the tunnels?" "That's even more dangerous," Kim pointed out. "We'd have no time to adjust if something goes wrong." "But it might be our only option." While they debated technical solutions, Ambassador Choi brought news of a different kind of problem. "3 more species have filed formal complaints against our mission," she reported. "They're demanding the Council shut us down completely." "On what grounds?" Lee asked. "Public safety. They claim our quantum experiments could destabilize local space-time." Lee laughed, but there was no humor in it. "They're more afraid of us succeeding than they are of the void locks collapsing. Can't blame them," Bei Minho said quietly. "If humans solve this, it proves that new ideas can be better than old wisdom. That's threatening to civilizations that are millions of years old." The crisis deepened when power to their workspace was cut entirely. Emergency lighting cast everything in red shadows. Their computers shut down, taking with them hours of calculations and preparation. "That's it," Kim said angrily. "They're not even pretending this is accidental anymore." Lee felt his temper rising, but forced himself to stay calm. Getting angry wouldn't help. "Options? We use our ship's power systems," Nam suggested. "It's not connected to the station grid. That means working in spacesuits in the cargo bay," Park pointed out. "Not ideal for delicate neural interface work. Better than not working at all." They spent the next 2 hours moving their equipment to Nam's trading vessel. It was cramped and uncomfortable, but it was theirs. No one could sabotage them here. As they worked, Lee noticed something interesting. The pressure and problems were bringing out the best in his team. Instead of panicking, they were becoming more creative. Each setback forced them to find new solutions. Park developed a way to share neural link data between team members, allowing them to coordinate more effectively. Kim figured out how to boost their quantum drives using Nam's exotic matter samples. The trading crew contributed practical knowledge about working in difficult conditions. "You know what's funny?" Yu Da-un said, as she helped calibrate equipment. "The alien species keep talking about how primitive we are, but they can't do what we're doing because they're too advanced." "What do you mean?" Lee asked. "They're so specialized." "Each species has perfected one approach to problems, but we're generalists. We can combine different methods because we're not locked into thinking one way is the only way." Nam nodded. "In trading, you learn that sometimes the best solution is the one nobody else thought to try." With 8 hours remaining, they were ready to begin the actual mission. Their equipment was functioning despite the sabotage. The 7 weak points in the void locks had been precisely mapped. The neural interface systems were prepared for the synchronized tunneling attempt, but as Lee looked at his tired, determined team, he realized they were about to attempt something that no species in galactic history had ever tried: coordinating multiple quantum tunnels across vast distances using nothing but human intuition and courage. "Everyone ready?" he asked. "No," Park said honestly, "but we're as ready as we can be." "The odds are still against us," Kim added, "but they've been against us from the beginning." Ambassador Choi, who had stayed to coordinate communications, smiled grimly. "I just received word from Earth. If we succeed, we're heroes. If we fail, we're still heroes for trying." Lee looked out the viewport at the distant Kepler sector. The void locks were flickering more rapidly now, like a dying heartbeat. 12 star systems depended on what happened in the next few hours. "All right, team," he said. "Let's show the galaxy what humans can do when everyone else says it's impossible." The final phase was about to begin. 6 hours remained when Commander Kim began his journey into quantum space. Lee watched from the command center of Nam's trading ship as Kim's modified vessel approached the first weak point in the void locks. The ship looked tiny against the massive energy barriers that surrounded the Kepler sector. "Neural link establishing," Park reported. She was connected to the quantum drive systems, her consciousness spread across multiple dimensions. "I can feel Kim's ship entering the quantum field." Through the neural network, Lee could sense what Kim was experiencing. It was like flying through a storm made of mathematics and light. The quantum tunneling drive created a bubble of folded space around his ship, allowing it to slip between normal dimensions. "This is incredible." Kim's voice came through the communicator, but it sounded strange and distant. "I can see the structure of space itself. The void locks aren't just barriers. They're like a living puzzle." The plan required Kim to place quantum tunneling devices at each of the 7 weak points. These devices would create synchronized doorways through folded space, bypassing the void lock barriers entirely, but navigating quantum space required split-second decisions that no computer could make. "First device in position," Kim reported. "The energy patterns here are beautiful. Like music you can see." Lee monitored the readings from their makeshift command center. Everything looked normal, but he knew that quantum space operated by different rules. What seemed stable could collapse without warning. "Kim, be careful," he said into the communicator. "We're reading some fluctuations in your local space-time. I see them. The quantum field is responding to my presence. It's almost like it's curious about me." Dr. Park, still connected to the neural link, suddenly tensed. "Lee, something's wrong. The void locks are responding to our attempt. They're changing." On the main display, the energy barriers around the Kepler sector began pulsing with new patterns. The weak points Kim was targeting started shifting position. "The barriers are adapting," Park continued, her voice strained from the neural connection. "They're learning from what we're doing." Lee felt his heart sink. They had planned for many possible problems, but not for the void locks to actively resist their efforts. "Kim, abort the mission," he said. "Return to safe space." "Negative, sir. I can handle this. The locks aren't trying to stop me. They're testing me." "Testing you how?" "I can feel it through the quantum field. Every move I make, every decision they're evaluating. Like they want to see if I can adapt as fast as they can." Lee looked at his team. Nam Junki was monitoring their ship's systems, making sure they maintained connection with Kim across the vast distances. Bai Minho and Yu Daun were preparing the other quantum devices for deployment. "Sir," Nam said, quietly, "the neural link is putting enormous strain on everyone connected. Dr. Park's vital signs are reaching dangerous levels." Lee could see sweat beading on Park's forehead as she maintained her connection to the quantum drives. Her hands were shaking from the effort. "I can hold it," she said through gritted teeth, "but not for much longer." "Second device deployed," Kim reported. "The pattern is becoming clearer. The void locks want to see cooperation, not just individual skill." "What do you mean?" Lee asked. "I need the others to connect to the quantum field. All 7 of us working together. The locks won't open for just one person." Lee realized what Kim was suggesting. Instead of taking turns with the neural links, they needed all 7 humans connected simultaneously. It was far more dangerous than anything they had attempted. "That could kill us," Park warned, still maintaining her connection. "The neural strain of linking 7 minds to quantum space simultaneously." "Might be exactly what the test requires," Kim finished. Lee made the hardest decision of his life. "Everyone, prepare for full neural link. We're going all in." One by one, the other team members lay down on the modified medical tables. Nam attached neural interface cables to each person's head. The cables looked fragile compared to the massive forces they were about to channel. "This is insane," Yudoan said, but she didn't move away from the table. "Insane is what humans do best," Bei replied. When all 7 neural links activated simultaneously, Lee felt his consciousness explode outward. Suddenly he wasn't just Lee Hyun-woo standing on a ship. He was part of something larger. A collective human awareness spread across multiple dimensions. Through the quantum field, he could sense his teammates' thoughts and feelings. Park's brilliant analytical mind, Kim's steady pilot instincts, Nam's practical experience, the determination of the younger crew members. But more than that, he could feel the void locks themselves. They weren't just barriers. They were a test created by an ancient civilization, waiting for a species that could demonstrate the right combination of qualities. "I understand now." Park's voice came through the neural link, but Lee could also feel her thoughts directly. "The locks require cooperation? adaptability, and courage all at once. Most species only show one or two of these traits. Through Kim's senses, Lee experienced quantum space as a living thing. The mathematical structures around them pulsed with intelligence. Every movement Kim made was being evaluated by criteria that went beyond technology or psychic power. Third device deployed, Kim reported. The locks are responding positively. They like that we're working together instead of competing. But the neural strain was becoming overwhelming. Lee could feel his teammates' minds struggling under the pressure. Yudaon's thoughts became scattered. Bei's connection flickered dangerously. We're losing cohesion, Nam warned. The link won't hold much longer. Just a little more, Lee said, though speaking required enormous effort. Kim, how many more devices? 4 to go. But Lee, the quantum tunnels are forming on their own now. The locks are helping us. Through the neural network, Lee felt a sensation like surprise from his teammates. The void locks weren't just allowing their tunneling devices to work. They were actively assisting the process. 5th device deployed, Kim continued. The energy patterns are synchronizing perfectly. It's like the locks want us to succeed. Lee realized that the test wasn't about solving an impossible puzzle. It was about showing the willingness to risk everything for others, even people they barely knew. The 12 star systems that would die if the locks collapsed contained billions of beings from hundreds of species. Most of them had never even heard of humans. 6th device in position, Kim reported. 1 more to go. But at that moment, the neural network began collapsing. The strain of maintaining 7 simultaneous connections to quantum space was too much for human minds to handle. Lee felt his teammates' consciousness starting to fragment. We're losing it, Park gasped. Blood was running from her nose. Hold on, Lee commanded, pouring his own mental strength into maintaining the link. Everyone, focus on why we're doing this. Think about the people we're trying to save. Through the quantum field, Lee felt his team's resolve strengthen. They weren't just risking their lives for glory or recognition. They were doing it because it was right. Final device deployed, Kim announced. All 7 quantum tunnels are forming. The locks are opening. On the main display, the void locks began to change. Instead of solid barriers, doorways of swirling energy appeared at each weak point. The tunnels Kim had created were stable and growing larger. It's working, Nam said in amazement. The quantum tunnels are holding. But as the 7th tunnel stabilized, something unexpected happened. The void locks didn't just open, they began transmitting information directly into the human neural network. Lee felt his mind flooded with knowledge from the ancient civilization that had built the barriers. Images of a species that looked almost human, but not quite. Beings who had faced a crisis similar to the current one, millions of years ago. Through the transmission, Lee understood the truth. The void locks were never meant to keep people out permanently. They were meant to wait for a species that could demonstrate the right qualities: intelligence without arrogance, cooperation without losing individual identity, and courage without recklessness. The ancient builders had sealed the Kepler sector not to hide treasure, but to preserve their knowledge for the right inheritors. They had waited millions of years for someone worthy to pass their test. Lee, Park's voice was weak but excited. I'm receiving technical data. Advanced science beyond anything the current galaxy knows. They're downloading it directly into our minds. Not downloading, Lee realized. Teaching. They want us to understand, not just copy. Through the neural link, his team absorbed knowledge about energy manipulation, space-time engineering, and technologies that could solve problems across the galaxy. But more importantly, they learned the philosophy behind it, the responsibility that came with such power. Quantum tunnels are fully stable, Kim reported. The path into the Kepler sector is open. Lee felt the neural connections beginning to fade as the immediate crisis passed. One by one, his teammates' minds withdrew from the quantum field, returning to their individual consciousness. As the neural links disconnected, Lee opened his eyes to find his team exhausted, but alive. Everyone was bleeding from their nose or ears, signs of the severe strain they had endured. But they were smiling, Did we do it? Yu Daun asked weakly. Lee looked at the main display. The void locks had transformed from barriers into stable doorways. 2 hours remained on the original deadline when the last piece of the puzzle fell into place. Lee stood in the main hall of Nexus Prime, but everything had changed. Where before there had been hundreds of alien representatives watching humans with doubt and amusement, now there was stunned silence. The holographic display showed the Kepler sector clearly, no longer hidden behind mysterious barriers but open and accessible. The 7 quantum tunnels that Kim had created were holding perfectly. More than that, they had stabilized the entire region. The threat of collapse that would have destroyed 12 star systems was completely gone. But the real shock came from what they found inside the Kepler sector. "The readings are incredible," Dr. Park announced to the assembly. She looked exhausted from the neural linking, but her eyes were bright with excitement. "The sector doesn't just contain rare minerals and energy sources. There's an entire preserved civilization in there." The Zephyrian High Counselor's energy form flickered with what might have been surprise. Preserved how? In stasis. Millions of structures, perfectly maintained. And more importantly, vast libraries of knowledge that make our most advanced science look primitive. Lee watched the alien representatives exchange glances. Some looked excited by the possibilities. Others looked worried about what this discovery meant for the balance of power in the galaxy. Ambassador Choi stepped forward. "The ancient builders left a message specifically for whoever passed their test. Captain Lee, would you like to share it?" Lee nodded and activated a small device Park had constructed. The neural link technology allowed them to translate and replay the message they had received directly into their minds. A holographic figure appeared above the assembly table. It looked almost human, but taller and more graceful. Its eyes held the wisdom of ages. "We are the architects," the figure began, speaking in a voice that somehow translated itself into every language simultaneously. "We built the void locks not to hide our treasures but to wait for those who would risk everything to save others they barely knew." The alien representatives leaned forward, fascinated despite themselves. "For millions of years we watched species attempt to break through our barriers. Each used their greatest strength, advanced technology, psychic power, military might. All failed because they approached the test as conquerors, not as saviors." The holographic architect gestured toward Lee and his team. "Today we have found what we sought. A species that combines intelligence with humility, cooperation with individual courage, and the willingness to sacrifice for the greater good." Lee felt the weight of thousands of alien eyes upon him. Some looked respectful now. Others still seemed skeptical. "The humans did not succeed because they were superior," the architect continued. "They succeeded because they were different. They approached an impossible problem with fresh thinking, worked together despite overwhelming odds, and never lost sight of why they were fighting." The message continued, but Lee was watching the reactions around the room. The crystal beings of the hegemony were analyzing the hologram with intense focus. The Etherians floated silently, their psychic forms pulsing with deep thought. Even the warlike Titan clan seemed impressed. "We leave our knowledge not as a gift but as a responsibility," the architect concluded. "To those who opened our locks, we entrust the wisdom to help all species grow beyond their limitations. Use it wisely." The hologram faded, leaving the assembly in complete silence. Captain Nam Jun-ki, who had remained quiet during the presentation, stepped forward. "There's more. The knowledge we received isn't just about technology. It's about cooperation between different types of minds." "What do you mean?" asked a representative from the Etherian collective. Dr. Park activated another display. "The architects discovered that each species in the galaxy has unique cognitive strengths. Humans aren't better than anyone else, but we're good at combining different approaches. The architects want us to help other species work together more effectively." Lee saw understanding dawn on some faces. The test hadn't been about proving human superiority. It had been about finding a species capable of bringing others together. The crystalline hegemony representative spoke first. "Your quantum tunneling technology combined with our computational matrices could solve problems neither of us could handle alone." An Etherian agreed. Human intuition paired with our psychic abilities might unlock new forms of space exploration. Even the Titan clan, leader nodded grudgingly. Your courage in battle mixed with our strength could protect the galaxy from threats we haven't even discovered yet. Lee felt hope building in his chest. This was what the architects had intended. Not human dominance, but galactic cooperation. But not everyone was convinced. A snake-like being with multiple heads hissed its displeasure. These humans got lucky. One success doesn't make them our equals. Lucky? Commander Kim stepped forward, still pale from the neural linking. We nearly died creating those quantum tunnels. Our success came from working together when everyone else said it was impossible. And that, said Ambassador Choi diplomatically, is exactly what the galaxy needs more of. The Zephyrian Councilor's energy form pulsed brighter. The Council must vote on humanity's status. Do we grant Earth a permanent seat, as promised? The vote wasn't even close. Species after species voted in favor, many admitting that the human approach had taught them something important about cooperation. But Lee realized the real victory wasn't political recognition. It was what happened next. Over the following hours, representatives from dozens of species approached the human team with proposals for joint projects. The Etherians wanted to study human neural patterns to improve their psychic abilities. The crystalline hegemony offered to help humans build better quantum computers. Smaller species that had never been taken seriously by the major powers asked for human assistance in developing their own unique capabilities. This is what the architects really wanted, Park said as she watched alien scientists eagerly discussing cooperation agreements. Not for one species to rule, but for all species to contribute their best qualities. 6 months later, Lee stood again in the main hall of Nexus Prime, but now it was different. The circular table had been expanded to include dozens of new species. The atmosphere was one of excited collaboration rather than competitive posturing. The Kepler sector had become a center of learning where species shared knowledge freely. Human neural linking technology allowed different types of minds to communicate directly. Crystalline computational power processed problems too complex for any individual species. Etherian psychic abilities enabled new forms of deep space exploration. Ambassador Choi, now Earth's permanent representative to the Council, approached Lee with a smile. The latest reports from the joint research stations are incredible. We've made more scientific progress in 6 months than most species achieve in centuries. And it all started because we refused to accept that something was impossible, Lee replied. Commander Kim, now leading a mixed species exploration fleet, had just returned from mapping new regions of space. The funny thing is, we're still not the most advanced species in the galaxy, but we've become the species everyone wants to work with. Dr. Park had established the Institute for Cooperative Science, where beings from different worlds learn to combine their unique abilities. The architects were right, she said. Our greatest strength isn't our technology or our intelligence. It's our ability to see potential in others and bring out the best in everyone. Lee looked around the hall where representatives from hundreds of species worked together on projects that would have been impossible for any single civilization. Some were designing new starships that combined multiple species technologies. Others were planning expeditions to explore regions of space that had been unreachable before. The snake-like being that had initially opposed humanity now worked closely with human linguists to develop better translation technologies. The proud, crystalline hegemony had learned to value intuition alongside logic. Even the Titan clans had discovered that cooperation could be more effective than conquest. You know what I realized? Lee said to his original team, now scattered across various important positions throughout the galaxy. The architects didn't choose us because we were special. They chose us because we were willing to try when everyone else had given up. And because we understood that saving others is more important than saving face, added Nam, who now commanded a fleet of relief ships that responded to crises across the galaxy. The youngest member of their original team, Yu Da-yoon, had become an expert in neural link technology and was training beings from dozens of species. I think the real lesson is that being primitive isn't always a disadvantage. Sometimes not knowing that something is impossible is exactly what you need to make it possible. As Lee prepared to leave Nexus Prime for Earth, he reflected on how much had changed in less than a year. Humanity had gone from galactic outcasts to the galaxy's bridge builders. They hadn't conquered anyone or proven their superiority. Instead, they had shown that different didn't mean inferior, and that cooperation could achieve what competition never could. The final message from the architects had been simple. We built the void locks to wait for those who would put the needs of many above the pride of few.